All right, so as you can see, we are going to be recording today's session, so we just want to make you aware of that. Welcome. We're excited to have you here for our June Quillo Nation call. Busy agenda today as we continue to move forward with kind of making a transition from just Quillo to Quillo Pro, and then adding Quillo Connect. So we're going to be sharing some good news as we always do. We'll talk a little bit about some of our retention resources, have a little bit more of a discussion around what can you do, how does Quillo help you continue to message in order to retain folks. Show you again a little bit more about the new feature that we're adding to Quillo Pro, and talk a little bit about that, get some opinions from you in terms of if we upgrade the dashboard, if you've got any thoughts around being involved with the focus group we're going to have on that. And then we'll talk, of course, about some self-care and then wrap up for our next call. So that's a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. And for the individual that just joined, let's see, welcome. Glad you're with us. How you doing today? Nope, we got somebody else joining us. We'll let them get in on this. So let's just go ahead and use the chat feature. It looks like we got people from across the country today. Just type in the chat what state you're from so that we can just kind of take a look at where everybody's joining us across the country. That would be very helpful. Kendra, so we got Texas, we got Minnesota, of course, we got California, Arizona, great.
Arkansas.
I'm sorry, Arkansas. Sorry about that. Great. Okay. So across the country, well, welcome everybody. We're glad you're with us. So let's kick off with some good news like we always do. Again, it's so critical and important that you not only listen to all those complaints that people might have, but you in some way try to figure out a way to incorporate some good news that's taking place in your organizations. And I would love to hear, is there something special that your organization is doing? Good news. Maybe we share that after we talk a little bit about what our good news is today. But our good news is that we do have a new hire coming on board. We're going to be doing some orientation with a lovely lady by the name of Kayla Jefferson. And you'll have the opportunity, of course, to meet her next time we have our Quillo Nation call. We've developed a little bit of a new role, which is called a marketing channel manager position in the organization. And that particular role, we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a few moments, but we'll be working directly with our group, and Doug's on today, the Valley Mountain Regional Center in California, specifically helping them implement Quillo Pro in the organization, developing some content. So we are just really excited to have Kayla join us. And again, we'll certainly introduce her as we have the opportunity to do that at our next meeting in person. So with that being said, we are going to talk a little bit about how we might be able to work with some of you who have been using Quillo for a little while. I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and he's going to talk a little bit about maybe adding some embedded services. So Mark, do you want to share a little bit about what this is about?
Absolutely. So, and appreciate it, Sue, and thanks to everybody joining today. You know, when we were talking to a lot of our groups over the last several months coming out of the pandemic, and, you know, everyone throwing around the term of getting back to normal, you know, really reinvigorated to utilize Quillo and now Quillo Pro as we relaunch here. They were looking for ways to make sure that the messaging is not only relevant and consistent, but custom to the organization, because that's where we and they've all seen the best benefits. So we wanted to keep this simple, and we've come out with a new ABC offering. And the goal here is to engage with Quillo team member anywhere from 2 days a month all the way up to, as Sue was saying, Kayla, being a full-time embed with organizations to handle the administrative, utilize best practices and help with the creative. So on the administrative side, we want to make sure that all of your onboarding is taken care of in a timely manner. Make sure that we are focused on the correct reporting, tracking KPIs, what's working, what's trending, what's not. So all of those additional pieces that you want to see and be able to report to leadership amongst your teams, we can help craft that monthly reporting, all of that fun stuff. Best practices as we are growing, every month here, we want to start utilizing what's working across the nation. So similar to Quillo Nation, but really focused on, some new initiatives that organizations and groups are using in different parts of the country that we can share with everyone to make sure that we're all achieving our best engagement with our staff. And then creative, we constantly are coming up with ideas. And when I say we, I mean Quillo Pro users and Quillo users. You have these moments of inspiration, but it's tough and difficult to find the time to actually execute on them. So that's where these, anywhere from, again, part-time to full-time embedded channel managers are here to help. So if you feel that, man, this would be great for Quillo, but I just can't find the time, reach out to me. We can talk about what it would look like and what we can offer specific to your organization based on time and what your goals are. And also, if you want to be part of the best practice channel, things like that, I'd love to hear from you. So any questions on this, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to set up time to talk one-on-one individually. And as this progresses, we'll keep reporting back on it during some future Quillo Nation calls.
Great. Thanks, Mark, for that update. We appreciate it. So hopefully some of you are intrigued by that, and we'll reach out to Mark and find out a little bit more information around what that might look like for your organizations. So let's take a step forward now and talk a little bit more about retention. And I'm going to turn this particular topic over to John. So John?
Well, hello, everybody, and thanks, Sue and Mark. Really what as we get forward to start for many of you the new fiscal year in July, just as a great opportunity to go back and focus on retention, the critical issue that drove us to start Quillo and Quillo Pro in the first place. And we want to share with you, as we look at retention, we created what we call the retention wheel. And that the center of the retention wheel is the focus on culture and well-being, and the culture of the organization and the well-being of our employees. We talk a lot about the well-being of people with disabilities, but how well are our staff doing, especially as we come out of this pandemic and now moving out into some new areas. I was just asked to speak at the national conference for NADSP, the National Association of Direct Support Professionals, about the concept of well-being and how technology contributes to well-being. And many times folks ask me, we're talking about culture, and they say, well, I just don't have enough time in the day to spend working on culture. And I'll ask them, I say, well, how much of your week do you spend working on culture? And they said, well, probably only about 30 minutes a week. And I said, my response is, what would you say to the fact that if I told you, you spent every minute of every day working on the culture of your organization? Because it's not what you do in a 30-minute meeting on culture, it's how you work with people, treat people, and work with them every day. And it's kind of surprising to folks because when they stop and think about it, culture isn't what you do when you're on the spot in a meeting. Culture is how you interact with people, how you spend your time, what processes you build for your organization, the habits you have, and the relationships you have with staff. And those are the 4 key principles as we look at this, what we call the retention wheel. And in each of those, we have to examine and look in the mirror and say, how do we spend our time? What are our processes, and are they really built around well-being for our staff? What are our habits? What do we do that creates this automatic action that helps build culture. And an example of that coming out of the pandemic, I've had more people tell me they have asked the simple question of their coworkers of, Sue, how are you doing today? And then listening to what they say. If you happen to see our daily video on Sunday, it was Andrea Chioli did a wonderful one about that question of how are you and how do you listen to people when they say that, when they are people with disabilities, when they are staff. So a key question about habits. And then lastly, relationships. How do we build those? So in each of those, we can unpack, and we could spend an hour on each one of those. But I want to touch on a few an example. One, before we jump into the others, is the one about processes. Sue helped an agency recently. When focusing on retention, they realized that they were giving bonuses to people for new hires. And they had raised the hiring wage of new hires. But then they realized they had some people that had been working there 15 years that was earning less money than the people that were hired last month, who were hired way above the midpoint in order to bring people in. And they were getting a bonus. Is that fair to the people that have been there 15 years? And so Sue did a study for them, and they were stunned by seeing the disproportionate spread on a graph of where their employees were at. And it led them to develop a whole new approach or process about how they were going to make sure people were moving above the midpoint. So how do our processes support retention? If we're going to give $1,000 bonus for a new hire in 6 months, what are you saying to the person that's been there for 15 years, that's hung with you for all this? That's just an example. We could talk more about that if that's something you want to get into, and I'm sure Sue could share a lot more in detail with you on that. But let's talk about some things that are, again, process and habits. The first one we want to do is share with you some resources that are on the Quillo Pro resource page. The first one is 17 ways to excite and ignite and inspire your new hires. One of the things that we found in talking to people is, what is your orientation like? And what is your onboarding like? When we asked DSPs, when we were interviewing them, what do you remember about orientation? And they said, how not to get fired. We signed a bunch of forms, and we were told what to do if somebody has an emergency, and we learned CPR. Many didn't even meet with a person with a disability. Many did not listen to parents talk about expectations. Many didn't meet with the leaders of their organization. And a lot of them didn't meet with their supervisors till they showed up on the job. So we surveyed agencies within Quillo and all around and created the 17 best tips of exciting ways to turn your orientation, that first step of getting people excited about the work and the why of what they're doing. Rebecca's got it up on the screen, but we're also going to share the link for you so you can see it. The idea that when we bring people on board, how are we spotting those future all-stars? How are we mentoring them? How are we bringing them along? Or do we just throw them out into the world and get them going? So you'll find a lot of different ways that people do that. One of the interesting ones out of Chicago is whenever they did a new class, and they did a new class every couple of weeks, because they were hiring too many people, they didn't want them to wait a really long time. So they would bring their supervisor in to have lunch with them. No agenda, just get a chance to get to know them while they were talking about what the job is going to be like. Others brought in a self-advocate to talk to them about what it's like having a staff person in your life. So these are all topics that we think about this, because one of the key data points that we see is in that first 90 days, we have a lot of people leave, and beginning to understand how do we coach and keep those people going during that critical first 90 days. Of course, we always want to say, how do you introduce Quillo within this, and Quillo Pro now, within your orientation process so people see how they can hear from a supervisor, hear or learn about topics. How do they feel about being part of the organization? So that's one of the tools that's out there as we talk about retention. And it's on the resources page to where you can pull that up. And again, that's just at the myquillo.com/resources. The next one we want to talk to you about is utilization and retention and the utilization curve. As we look about this, one of the things here that we again share with the retention wheel is how do you put in place some new habits? And what's the definition of habit? Habit is something you do without even thinking about it. How you say hello to people, how you greet people, how do you listen to people. We shared in this document beginning to look at how do you take each of these 4 parts of the retention wheel and begin building habits and activities that begin focusing on there. One of the things is, again, looking at the change you want to see happen. And one of the things we know that people know that they have a turnover problem, but then what are your goals that you want to see that change? What is it you want to see happen in that first 90 days? What do you want to see in the first 6 months, the first year? And then how do you want to impact those people that have been with you 8, 9, 10, 12 years to make them still valuable? As we look at that in the utilization curve document, we talk about how do you find some influencers within your organization, within those subgroups, and begin planning out the messaging you want to have them have. How do you want people to feel? You know, one of the key things now in this new world we have of social media is this term of influencers, people that are having an impact on their coworkers. So who are the influencers in your organization? And how do you get them to influence in the right way? We call them champions. So when you begin recruiting these people, these are the folks that can also recruit messaging for you. That we can have champions that are staff, self-advocates, or family members that can help build that messaging of where you want people to do. And there's a great worksheet in here that helps you thinking about the content in a way that makes sense. Again, this is one of the things that as we look at this, we've had people say, boy, John, this makes a lot of sense. We just don't have time to do this. That's where with the channel manager model that we're looking at, how can we give you some additional help that helps you carry this out and gets that desired change on the retention level up. And even as we talk about this, when we say, you know, we don't want to just lower turnover, we want to increase the positive of how we build them. And one of the challenges, again, people have, I'm so busy replacing people and everything we've going, we don't have time to take this on. So would a couple days a month help you do that? So these are some new tools as we begin thinking about retention. But the key is all of this is this visualization of what is it you want to change and how do you want people to feel that sense of culture and well-being. And it becomes this setting of the goal, setting some benchmarks that you want to see, and then what are you doing that begins to make a difference with folks? That becomes part of it. And as we all look in the mirror of saying, where do we spend our time? What are our relationships that we want to have with folks? How do our processes support this change we want? And then what are the habits we're going to instill? And when we talk about changing a habit, one of the books that I shared in the document utilization curve is called Atomic Habits. And he talks about atomic in the sense of not atomic like atomic explosions, that you've got to do these life-changing changes all in one fell swoop. He points out those rarely work and they often leave you more frustrated. He talks about atomic changes being very small at the atom level, at the very smallest level. That if you want to change, you pick an area like that, people in the first 90 days, then pick those things, some very simple things that are doable, that are manageable, and you can move forward with that group of people. An example of that, in every class of people that you bring in, that you hire, you probably have some potential all-stars. Assuming all of them may be potential all-stars, but there's some that have some special spark. Some people that you think, boy, this is one we want to really nurture. What do we do with that person to let them know that they have a future and where that path goes with the organization? That's one simple thing to begin following up with that person and seeing how we build that culture of well-being that'll lead to retention. Those are just some of the tools that are out there. If you go on our resources page, you'll find a lot more that are all tied into things you can do that helps feed into building that culture of retention and well-being for staff. Hope those were helpful. Glad to take any quick questions, or if it resonated with anyone, would love to hear any comments as you look at that.
I like how it kind of breaks it down. So it's not as overwhelming if you're talking about changing at the atomic level, you know. And I agree with we see a lot of flash in the pan type things that come in, and you can just about guarantee that it's gone as soon as you hear that it's not going to be around as soon as you hear of it. But being able to take small increments, that's a lot more workable. And probably a lot more sustainable.
And that's a really good point, Dave, because you think about the messaging, how it's received on the other end. One of the things we learned talking with staff is that oh, here we go again. Management went to a workshop, and now we're going to start something new, and in 60 days, it'll be ancient history. So you want to start things that you can sustain and keep them thinking about that, this is something we all want to do, and change that point of what do people see as our culture. And, this is again a good point about listening and small changes of how do we open up and see. One of our folks was asking me the question last night. They were thinking about hiring a brand new person at a management level piece that is all about one of the things they've learned through the pandemic is how to better listen to people with disabilities. And they were trying to think about, what do we call this person? Because they wanted to hire somebody as a director in this agency that is actually a person with disabilities that they have served, whose focus is going to be working with first line managers and DSPs and training them on how better to listen and engage with people with disabilities, not just their service plans or their goals or their behavior plans, but how to really listen and engage with them. And they were trying to think of a title for this person that would really communicate that culture change that they're wanting to achieve. And so this idea of how do you instill habits that you're going to stick with? And when he wrote about his sense of changing culture and changing habits, he said changing a habit is a minimum of a 90 to 180 day process, because you've got to keep doing it until it becomes, you do it without thinking. So if the habit is, I'm going to reach out to one of my new employees once a day that just went through training, and welcome, Tony, glad you're here. And I'm going to use you as an example. Yes, but because I know Tony well, we've known each other for a long time. Tony is the executive director of the Valley Mountain Regional Center, 350 employees. But Tony is known for knowing his people and getting in touch with them. But if his habit that he wanted to instill is once a day sending a personal email to one new hire, that is just designed to keep them knowing that, hey, we're thinking about you. We're so glad you've joined and looking forward to the great future you have with VMRC. Well, that's a great habit. And doing it one day is great, doing it two, but you've got to instill it so that it really becomes thinking to where, gosh, I haven't done that yet today. And so the idea, the habits start building over time to where this is something we're going to do. Same thing with our processes. One of our agencies that we were talking to at one time, that they made all of their job coaches come in every morning and clock in to their central headquarters. This happened to be in New York City, where most people don't have cars. So they found some of their job coaches were riding the train an hour just to clock in. Then they're going back out to the city to go work with the people they support. 2 hours of the day in the morning were spent just clocking in and getting back and forth. That isn't a process that's very conducive to good relationships or best use of time. So as we think about retention, everything we do has a feed into the culture of well-being, and beginning to take these four things in small steps of building it. Time, how we use it, processes that we use, habits, and relationship. Take a look at some of those tools, begin to see how you can use those. And again, we're available all the time to brainstorm, look at this, and begin thinking about building each of those. And especially as we now come back out of the pandemic and moving to this new level and begin thinking about it, and thinking about, as we talk about vaccines, was listening to a thing with the AADMD, the American Association on Developmental Medicine and Dentistry, talking last night about the issues around what we've learned out of COVID and the fact that we're going to be doing vaccinations probably for a good long time against COVID, and doing an annual shot like we do a flu shot. How do we build that culture up of what that's going to lead to in the future, and how we're going to be taking care of one and each other moving down the road. So again, take a look at these and some of the other tools in there, and anything we can help to brainstorm, plan, or begin thinking about using Quillo Pro to begin making that help as what you're doing, we're excited to do so. And thinking about it at that atomic level, how do we start small and build?
Don, what was the name of the book that had the atomic level change, incremental change?
It was called Atomic Habits. I will pull that up and get it out to folks. Great. Lastly, we've sent around, their book is out. We're excited to share it with, we sent one copy to everybody. It is one of the great stories of listening to people out there. Our friends at Blitz Media did the book, Heart, Hope, and Honesty. We've now included it in some of our onboarding for our new employees and begin sharing it, because it's a great way of looking at building a culture of retention. How do we recruit people, but how do we retain them? And one of the things it also is so good at in there is addressing the issue of there's certain kind of mind trash or excuses that we build up and we hear. Some of it's in the popular media. For example, people saying, well, we can't hire DSPs because McDonald's is paying more money. We're not competing with McDonald's. What we're competing with is finding a way to reach people that want to make a change and make change with other people in their lives. So we sent it to each of the CEOs that are out there. Dave, I still need your mailing address because I want to send it to you, and you can share it with your folks there at Tarrant MHMR. So if you wouldn't mind sending me your mailing address, I'll get yours in the mail to you. So take a look at it. It's a great read. It's a fun read. It's one of the best things I've found in 40 plus years to really look at our field and what we can do.
Okay.
Great.
John, thank you very much. All right, well, before we wrap up into this new app feature, I want to circle back a little bit, because I hope with sharing a little bit of our good news and a little bit around retention, There's some things most likely happening in your organizations. I'd like for you to either share on the chat feature or unmute, and let's hear what are the good things that are happening in your organizations. I know some of you have been diving into vaccinations. How's that going? Have you done some fundraising in a little bit different fashion? What's the good news that's happening in your organizations? I would really like to kind of open this up for you to share so that others can learn what's taking place. And actually, Joe, I'm going to ask if you can share a little bit. I think you guys were doing an event at the last meeting that we had. How did it go?
You said Joe?
Joe Cullen, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I wasn't jumping in if it was somebody else. Yeah, we did just actually have an event. I think it was last Monday. We had a golf, I don't know if tournament's really the right word, but a fundraising golf open.
Okay.
And it went really well. It wasn't really so much, the people we support golfing, but one of the people that we support, her brother is a, I guess, radio personality in the Twin Cities. So he does a lot for us, especially if we put on an event and he's involved in it. Just getting him to like retweet things that we put out reaches a far greater audience than we do on our own. So I think we had about 100 golfers. It was a nice day, but brutally hot that day. Last week it was like practically near 100, but I think they raised quite a bit of money. People had a really good time, and there were people involved. We had some of the people we support, were involved in some different volunteering roles and things like that. So, I think that was fun for everybody. And now we're kind of gearing up. We have our annual fundraiser that's usually an event, like in a ballroom type thing.
Okay.
For a second year in a row, we're going to do it virtually. I mean, I know things are opening up more, but they just thought for now that would still be a better way to go. And hopefully next year we can do another in-person one. So that's been kind of fun to be working on as well. And we'll have a lot of people involved in that, whether we, tell their stories, or we have one guy, we had like a talent show, a virtual talent show a couple months ago. So we have one guy who is going to sing during the event, and just, a lot of things like that. So, as things are opening up a little bit more, it's kind of fun to, be able to have the people we support having, events that they've enjoyed. I know they did a fishing trip last week. They've started up some bowling leagues again, and they still, I haven't been to one yet, but I saw, they're still masked up for that and stuff. But I know, there were a lot of disappointed people last year that they couldn't do a lot of their typical things, and a lot of them too are back out,
Right.
With their jobs or day programs, things like that. So it's just kind of nice to see, even though there's still precautions and everything, just some semblance of normalcy. And just even our office itself, people are kind of in and out a little bit, but we're hoping to kind of all get back there. I think the plan is like around right after Labor Day. So kind of nice, to feel like we're reaching some kind of potential normal again. We had, I don't know the exact stats, but we had a pretty good response to people getting vaccinated between staff and, people we support and stuff. So,
Great. Good.
We were, I think, pretty pleased with that. So yeah, overall, I think things are going pretty well
Great.
here in Minnesota at Hammer. So
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. You can sense just there's some excitement in the air, just people getting back in person and doing some things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
Anybody else want to share some good news? What's happening in your organization? Anybody?
Well, I'll share a little bit. We're almost done with our vaccination clinics, and that's a lot of work. One of the things that just really impressed with is we had one for children when they opened that up for the younger people. And that was pretty difficult for a lot of our kids that we serve. And the behavior consultants from our different providers that we contract with, they came out and volunteer and help the kids settle down and get through and get their vaccination. So you would have seen some of these kids, you would have said, there's no way that kid's getting their vaccination.
Really?
They're really, worked up. And
Yeah.
it's just the skill of the behavioral consultants, how they really talk with people, with the kids, and
Yeah.
work them to the point where they can get it. So,
Yeah.
and
Great.
it's life saving. So it was really, really heartening to see that, the good.
Yeah. Well, great idea to leverage the behavioral therapists there to help manage that, because I can only imagine some would be a little scared. So
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tony.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I know that there's probably a lot of good things really happening out there in your organizations. So just try to take a moment, make sure that, you're helping share those messages or that information with people, because, you can get caught up in all the crazy down things that are happening in life. And what we want to do is make sure that people are hearing all the good things that are taking place. So thanks for sharing those couple of items. So as we think about Quillo moving forward, we are going to be switching our name a little bit. We're still going to be Quillo, so people will still download the Quillo app, but then they're going to have two opportunities to go either to the Quillo Pro or to the Quillo Connect. And again, we'll continue this with Quillo Pro. And as one of our new features that we're going to be adding, it's around targeted messaging. And what we are hoping to do here is to reach really specific groups, to give you the opportunity to say, hey, there's a residents group that I want to get. And here the example is the Sunny Street Residents group. I have a specific message that I want to send to them. And so you'll be able to target by identifying the names of the individuals in that particular residence area, that you can send a specific message to that group. Maybe it's the new hire group for the last 60 days that you want to send a very specific message to. So again, you might be able to share that message, then create it, and then specifically say, okay, I want to target this group of individuals. Perhaps it's a message to your behavioral consultants or to just the job coaches. So if you think about your organization, these video messages can then be very targeted. So think about, how would you use this feature in your organization? Who would you want to send targeted messages to? Again, we've given you some examples, but perhaps there's other smaller specific groups that you would like to target. So think about how you might use this particular feature. And then, the other question we have is, when you think about managing this, would there be someone in your organization? Will it be the content manager who organizes, because they will have to specifically identify input names, information? Will it be your customer administrator that you've set up? Or do we need another individual to make this happen? So that's kind of the new feature that we're going to be adding to the app around targeted messaging. And we just want to get your feedback as you think about how you've been utilizing Quillo, which will soon be called Quillo Pro. Does this feel like it's a feature that you will enjoy using, that you can already think of, gosh, I would like to send some targeted messaging to this specific group of individuals? Any thoughts, feedback that you have around how this app feature might work in your group?
Hey, Sue, we haven't quite rolled out Quillo to all our staff yet, but we have, 300 and gonna be close to 400 different social workers, and a lot of them are grouped in teams of the age groups that they work with.
Okay.
So, the social workers that are in our clinical department, or you know, are the ones that work with our infants and toddlers, the ones that work with our, you know, school age children. So I can really see this being beneficial to sending targeted messages specific to their groups. Like you said, new hires. So that
Yeah,
I think I could see us utilizing it in that aspect.
great. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. Good thinking around that. Any others? Thoughts around how you might use targeted messaging?
And if you ever want to stop and think about the power of video on this, we were doing a onboarding for a customer, and we suggested to one of their program managers that they just stop what they're doing for 5 minutes and record a 1-minute video to one staff member and just text it to them. That who is somebody that's a recent new hire, that they could just send them a quick message and say, boy, you're really doing a good job, and I was just thinking about you and wanted to let you know how much I appreciate what you're doing. And this one program manager came up to me during the break and said, you know, I thought that was kind of hokey, but I did it. But I got this message back from the staff person I sent it to, and she was nearly crying because she said, I never even thought you knew who I was, much less that you would send a message to me about this. So when we think about the communication and the power of video, it's got such an impact. And so that's where we wanted this targeted messaging and being able, and we didn't prompt Tony, but I was just thinking about with Tony's comment about I'm impressed with the behavioral consultants and they're helping people through the clinics. What a great message back for folks that as you begin thinking about that. So we hope this is a powerful new tool for you as you begin thinking about it. And we need a little input from you on how do we best make it work. What we'll not be able to do is no individual staff member will be able to create a group and send messages to their own group of people that they do within Quillo. This is all going to be moderated and controlled through key people that you will choose that'll have this feature and be able to do that. So we think that's an important control to put in the process.
Great. All right, well, we're excited about that. And if you have any other input as you start to think about this, please reach out, let us know. We would love to hear your feedback on it. The other ask that we have is we are going to be taking a closer look at our dashboard, doing some updates on that. Today, hopefully you've been out there as a customer administrator, taking a look at your utilization, what you're doing. And as we continue to try to improve and add different features, what's the information, what's the data that would be most helpful for you? So this is our opportunity to have that input from you. We're seeking anyone who wants to volunteer to say, hey, Sue, I'd like to be a part of this discussion. Please reach out to me. Let me know that you're interested in providing some input for this. I would certainly appreciate it. But even as you think about the targeted messaging, what's the data you want to pull from that? What do you want it to look like? Today, as you know, you can go out to the dashboard in the portal and you can see things like the number of people that have viewed over time. You can see how many users you have. You can see what videos they like. You can also see what time of day people are watching most often, most frequently. So as we continue to evolve and gather data and input, we'd love to hear back from you as to what you want to do. So I am seeking volunteers to be on a focus group to just talk about the dashboard and provide some additional information around what will make it even better. So if you would like to be a part of that, feel free to put your name in the chat now or send me a personal email. Rebecca's put my email address on there. So I would appreciate any input that you have and would love to have you as part of the focus group. Okay. Dave, let me see here. May already exist, but I've been able to find it. Okay. Users have logged in. foremost. Okay. Yeah, Dave, we'll take some time and talk through it and get you some information. We can show you where that login information is. So, okay, great. Okay, good question. Any, and like I said, anyone else that wants to be a part of this focus group, please let me know. I would like to have at least 3 or 4 people that are out there using it to give us some input. Thank you. All right. Well, as you know, we always talk about self-care because it's important for you to take care of yourself so that you can serve others and support the people that are in your organizations. So we always like to try to highlight a couple different videos. One that we're going to highlight is As the Barriers Come Down. And this particular video is just newly created by our Quillo team. And I think it's one in which, if you think about your organization, it's very appropriate now because it's time to say, what have we learned? So Rebecca's actually going to play this particular video for us. So Rebecca, would you like to play that, please?
Each day seems to bring more news that the coronavirus pandemic is tapering as vaccination rates climb and cases fall. In addition to the very real loss many of us experienced, this past year pushed us 6 feet apart, put up literal barriers, and led to increased isolation for many. Now with these glimpses of hope, we find those barriers are coming down. Whether it's going back to work, seeing people in person, or spending less time on Zoom, we hope you are finding safe ways to reconnect. How will you reach out to those who have been the most isolated this year? How can we continue to keep our communities safe and healthy? What will you take away from this past year and into the future?
I think what I really like about this particular video is it kind of reflects on those 3 questions at the end. So it would be a great way to start a staff meeting, to end a staff meeting, and just simply talk about, you know, what did we take away from this past year? And you might be surprised when that brainstorming happens, the type of information you gather from those folks that are participating. So that's one particular video. The other one is called The Unseen Impact of Your Work. Again, this one's done by Quillo. And it's a very, very short yet powerful message on this particular one. Go ahead and search it on your app, take a look at it. But again, it's about knowing whose lives we touch and how we've possibly made them better. So it's a very strong, powerful message. So those are the 2 self-care videos that we wanted to highlight this month. I hope you take the opportunity to go ahead and search those and then leverage and utilize them in your organization, share them with some folks. So,
Sue, I'll just add one quick shout out to Kisa, who created that, the last one on how the barriers come down. I think the content and message was really powerful, but I also just wanted to point out the way that it was done with pieces of paper, right? In Kisa's case, she's a very talented artist and we are thrilled to have her on the team. But it's also a way if folks don't want to be on camera, right? Just another reminder of creative ways to share a message. If you've got folks who like to draw, you know, to help share what they're interested in, whatever it might be. So just wanted to give a quick, you know, nod to the various ways that we can be creative with these messages and different tools that we can use. That's as simple as, you know, paper and whiteboards and, you know, colored pencils. So well done, Kisa, and thank you.
yeah, great point, Rebecca. Yeah, if you've got people who are a little camera shy, this is a different approach. So excellent. Okay. Well, as we roll into the summer month of July, we know that there's a lot of vacations going on. We of course are busy with the launch of the app and getting things ready for that. So what we want to do is we want to take a little bit of a break here from our normal group call, and we're going to set up just one-on-one chats with everyone and just kind of get a feel for where you are. Talk a little bit more about the transition to Quillo Pro so that you can hopefully send some messages out to your teams, just to kind of give them a heads up. They're going to see a little bit different of look and a feel for how you scroll on the app. So we will be connecting with each of you to talk about, kind of what's taking place in your organizations and how we can continue to grow Quillo and the use of the messaging in those organizations. So that's really going to be our game plan for the month of July. And then we will regroup back on August 19th for our Quillo Nation call. So with that, I just want to ask if there are any other questions, comments, anything else from the Quillo staff that anyone needs to share.
Well, and thank you, everybody. You know, one of the things in the call last night that one of the doctors shared out and said, one of the things we have to acknowledge to those of us that made it through this time frame in the last year is that we made it through. That this is something that the whole country went through, and the resilience of everyone is just remarkable. And that's something to be very proud about, whether it's you personally have everything gone through, what the agency has gone through. Who'd have thought that you'd be doing vaccine clinics 3 years ago, Tony, to begin doing all these things? Or what you'd be dealing with, Meredith, in the greater Chicago and Illinois area of all the things happening. Don't underestimate the achievement of just being resilient and getting through and sharing that appreciation with everybody, because this has been an ordeal unlike anything we've ever had to deal with before. So thank you for being part of it. Thank you for sharing part of your Thursday with us and being part of this wonderful journey with Quillo. You're amazing folks, and we thank you so much for letting us be part of your world.
All right, everybody have a great day. It's good to see you. Bye
Take
now.
care, be safe.
Bye.